Hello again and welcome back to our course on PSE 15. This is possibly the most important section on the whole course, and it's particularly important if you use the organizer even in quite a limited way, because we're going to talk about backup and restore, and particularly if you're going to capture and catalogue a large number of images, it's absolutely essential that you get in place an effective backup regime. The first thing to mention here is I haven't shown you this particular backup reminder before, but you've probably seen it already on your own system. In fact, it may have been driving you mad ever since you first installed PSE 15. You may have been clicking on Remind Me Next Time, or you may have checked Don't Show Me Again, in which case you won't have seen it again since, although of course you do know how to set those warning dialogues back on again. What we're going to do in this section is set up a backup regime, and then in future hopefully you won't get that reminder because you'll be running backups, you'll be fully organized, and you'll be ready in the event that something goes horribly wrong. So what do I mean by something going horribly wrong? What sort of thing can cause a problem? Well, if you're using a PC, there may be a power failure. Your device, laptop, or whichever other device you're using may itself develop a physical fault. The hard drive may fail, for example. There may be a software error in PSE. All major pieces of software have software errors in them. There is not a single major piece of commercially available software that doesn't have errors in it. Most of the time the errors are obscure enough that they don't affect you, but sometimes something comes to light. You may be the unfortunate person to first discover an error, and it may damage one or more of your images, or in some way make the information you've got in your PSE catalogue unusable. You may be a victim of malware, some sort of computer virus. Your device may be stolen. What happens if somebody steals your laptop, or you leave the laptop on the train, or you drop it? You may make an error. Supposing you're working away on your catalogue and you accidentally delete several hundred images and then don't realise until later the same day that you've accidentally deleted them. So there are so many things that can go wrong. What you need is to have regular backups so that you can restore the catalogue to a point, a snapshot point in time, and get back what you had before the damage occurred. Let's look at some other important factors in relation to a backup. If you back up your catalogue and get to the point that you can restore the catalogue in the event of a disaster, that's of limited value if you lose all of the images that are referred to in the catalogue. As we've already seen, the images are kept separately from the catalogue itself. So you need to also consider the backup of images, and given that your images may be distributed over different devices, you may have some for instance on the hard drive of your device, but you may have some on external drives, network storage, etc. You need to take a holistic view to backup and say, is everything being backed up? Not just the catalogue itself, but the images wherever they may be being kept. So that's one very important factor to bear in mind. In just a moment I'm going to run the first backup on this particular catalogue. But before I do, I need to point out one or two other very important factors. And one of them is that there is really little point in backing up a catalogue to the same device that the catalogue is on. There's no point in backing up this particular catalogue, Toby New, to the same drive on the same computer, because if it's the computer that's lost or the computer's hard drive that's damaged, I will have lost not only the catalogue but the backup as well. So you should always back up to a different device. For demonstration purposes here, I'm going to back up to memory sticks, just USB memory sticks. I normally back up to removable hard drives. The second important point is to remember that one backup does one catalogue. So if you have more than one catalogue, you'll need to back up each of them separately. I'm going to back up Toby New here. It hasn't been backed up before, so that will to some extent determine how I get the backup process started. What I'm going to do now is to say remind me next time on the backup reminder. I will ultimately switch it off, but I don't normally switch this off until I've actually got my backup regime in place. So I'm going to click on remind me next time. Then it's up to the file menu and backup catalog. When you do a backup, there are basically two types of backup. There's a full backup, and as you can see there, it says copy all items from the current catalog. You must first complete a full backup before you may use the incremental backup option. The second option, the incremental backup option, copy the current catalog and all new or modified files since the last backup. Now the key thing here is that particularly if you have a large catalog with a lot of images, and let's suppose you're going to do a backup every day, you will soon use up an awful lot of space. So the usual procedure that people follow is to run a full backup sometimes and an incremental backup other times. Now exactly how frequently you back up and how frequently you perform an incremental backup I'll talk about in just a moment. But the very first time you run a backup on a catalog, you must start with a full backup. So this is going to be a full backup. Click on next, and now I need to set up my backup. First of all, select the destination drive. Well, both C and E are hard drives on this device, so I'm certainly not going to use those. I've loaded a memory stick. It's not a very high capacity memory stick, but it will probably do for this first demonstration, so I'm going to select that. And the path is F. I've set up a folder on there to use as the folder for this backup. So let me just browse to that folder. Now I've called it Toby New Backup Monday. I'll come back to Monday in a moment. You don't really have to name them after days of the week, but for the purposes of what I'm doing here, as you'll see, it's going to be quite suitable. A bit lower down you can see that PSE has already worked out how much space I need for this backup. It's just under 500 megabytes. Bear in mind it's got the catalogue to back up and the images to back up as well. So we're just under 500 megabytes, which is actually quite a small figure. There are not many images in this catalogue so far, only 140 approximately. So once you get a few thousand, as you'll see, you're going to need a pretty big space to do a backup. One of those external hard drives is what I normally use. Of course, with those, you get a very high capacity nowadays for a relatively low price. Having made my selections, I click on Save Backup. And away it goes, copying the backup files. It'll take a little while, and I'll get a message when it's finished. And finally I get the message, the backup completed successfully. Let's take a look at what it's actually done. I'm not going to go through every detail in the contents of the Toby New Backup Monday folder on my memory stick, but you have a little file for each of the images. Then you have the images themselves, so you have a whole set of JPEG files. And right towards the end in this case, obviously the order of these will depend on the order you have this folder sorted, but towards the end you have a catalogue backup file, catalog.buc, and a backup tally file. And of course bear in mind that I may have other sorts of media here, such as an MP4 file here, and this particular file corresponds to one of my projects. So that's a PSE SSC file. The key point here is that this is a full backup. If I work, say, every weekend on my images, I may choose to do a full backup every Monday. But in subsequent days, if I only perhaps do a little bit of editing, I may only want to do an incremental backup. So what I'm going to do next is to make a small change to a couple of the images in my catalogue, and then I'm going to do an incremental backup that I'm going to put in a folder called Toby New Backup Tuesday. So let me do an instant fix to this image. I'm going to save that. Now let me go back and I'm going to rotate that image. And now I'm going to run an incremental backup. This time choose Incremental and click on Next. F, browse to the folder. It's that one. And I choose the previous full backup. And in doing that, I go to the folder and identify the tally file, the TLY file. And then what PSC tells me is that my incremental backup only needs 20.2 megabytes. Click on Save Backup. And of course that's going to be a much quicker backup because it's only saving information about what's changed. So let's click on OK and take a look at the incremental backup. Once again, I have that catalog backup file and the tally file, but I only have two of the images in there now. The one that I made the change to and the one that I rotated. And then I have one or two other very small files associated with information related to those specific media items. So you can see how much quicker and smaller an incremental backup is. I said at the beginning of this section that this is possibly the most important section on the whole course. To be fair, there is another important section, and that is the next one, because in the next section what I'm going to do is to accidentally, on purpose, delete a very large part of the contents of this catalogue and show you how to restore from the backup that I've just made. That's in the next section. I'll see you then.